Welcome or welcome back to the Customer Success Festival APAC. I hope you enjoyed the event so far. Before we dive into the next session, again, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all partners and speakers. We cannot do this without you. If you really like the content, please subscribe to our CSC membership where you can get loads of templates, framework, on-demand videos, and be able to rewatch all the presentation sessions for this event. So head over to customersuccesscollective.com and treat yourself there. So sit back, and here's the next session. Hello, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to the Customer Success Festival APAC. Can everyone hear us? I think we got someone here cannot hear us. Anyway, our next speaker is our honor to bring you Aaron, the head of renewables and customer success APAC from NetApp. Aaron, and he will share his experience and all these findings around customer retention strategy. Morning, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Ryan, and thanks for inviting me for this session. Good to have it here.
Sounds great. The stage is yours now. Please feel free to take it from here.
Perfect. Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. And I'm assuming most of our audience is in APAC. So good morning, good afternoon. If you are if you are in Australia, it's already afternoon, and even in Japan. So if and just want to make sure that I'm just reading comments, people can hear us. Great. So yeah, before I start in, I just wanted to throw in some question. I want to understand which industry you are in, or I might just throw in some in the chat, like whether you are B2B, B2C, SaaS, so that I just have fair idea of what sort of audience we are looking in today. Okay, B2B SaaS. Great. I think that's right now the future. Anybody else, just to get some idea? Okay, mostly SaaS. Okay, then it's more relevant SaaS. Okay, great. My job is half done. That means thanks for sharing, guys. So the reason I asked is that there's a lot of initiative going on, and probably looks like 90% everybody's in SaaS. So that's great. Let me first dive in. So about me, I run, as Ryan mentioned, I run a renewal business for NetApp in APAC, roughly around 100 million business in APAC, with a team of around 25 people spread across APAC, different countries. Just to give you a bit of, before even I go into the companies I've worked with, I'm really passionate about customer success. My career over the years have been built around customer success, but it in no means it's every day I'm learning something new. I visit a restaurant, I'll see the people from hospitality industry and see how they treat. They teach us so much on customer success, and we can take back a lot of this to our more of a B2B sales and start defining how we treat our customers. So there is a lot to learn. So that's and again, I generally attend these sessions to get to know more. So it's not a one-way street. I would expect some feedback from you. If there are ideas, do feel free to share, and do reach out to me. My LinkedIn connect is there. If you are interested, reach out to me. If you are in Singapore, love to catch up. If you are somewhere else, we can now with the current scenario, we can do Zoom or catch up. So always up for a virtual coffee or a physical meetup, depending, and love to talk about customer success. Another passion I have is creating. One of the things most of you would actually subscribe to is the overall challenges that we have. There is no right and wrong thing. Customer success is a function which is evolving right now. And if you talk to different people, you get a completely different perspective from different industries, different companies. That's why I said there is no right and wrong. As a community, if we get together and brainstorm, I think that's where we will evolve into it. And fundamentals applies everywhere, but there are still areas wherein it's going to be very specific for certain industries. Again, I'll quickly pass through about myself. I've worked with few of companies. Currently, I'm with NetApp. Previously was with Quest, Veritas. The three companies in the bottom, I put it in the box. Reason being, I have not directly worked with them, but as part of ServiceSource, I've managed their business in APAC. Servisource, if some of you would know, is a customer success or customer life cycle management company which manages install-based customers for big wonders like BMC, Google, and Red Hat. So I've worked with them managing their business. So just wanted to put a caveat that I've not directly worked with them, but yeah, manage their business as part of the extended team. So that's about me. I'll quickly jump into. So before I think, let me see if I skipped a slide. Okay, so that sounds good. Um, I think what I wanted to highlight here is give you some stats, and feel free to chime in like if you have something relevant in your particular industry. But this study is from 2018. In fact, one surprising fact which I found was there was another study done in 2016. The potential revenue loss in that study was somewhere around 1 trillion, 1.6 trillion. So interestingly, in 2 to 3 years time, that number has gone down. So which again, it's open to like exploration. But what I believe is probably the reason is that as customer success is evolving over the years, people are getting more like aware of the value of retaining the customers, and that's where the focus is going on, and that potential churn is coming down. So that, I mean, again, 1 trillion is something which a lot of countries doesn't have as their GDP, right? So there are only handful of countries that have GDP higher than $1 trillion. So that kind of explains the kind of impact not retaining the customer have. And then another interesting fact, if you see, if your company is not relevant, you probably, in fact, if your company is relevant, you have 68% of people who would go and recommend you with your friends. And there is no best referrals or best marketing than the word of mouth marketing. Similarly, on the flip side, if you see, there are around 61% people who would switch to a different brand if they don't find relevance with you, and 29 would actually switch completely 100%. I think the one of the interesting stat which I liked was a research done by Bain and company. There was like, if you retain customer by 5%, um, your profit can go up by as high as 95%, right? And it's very simple. It's not a simple math, but it's simple. If you retain a customer, they'll buy more from you. And of course, retaining a customer, the customer, and a lot of you guys are from SaaS, the CAC, customer acquisition cost of retaining a customer is almost like negligible, if not zero. While getting a new customer is always expensive. And again, a lot of you guys are in SaaS would understand, if you lose a customer in the first year, you basically put money on a customer and you don't make any money at all. So on an average, what we have seen some of the studies in SaaS, you probably need at least 2 to 3 years of recovery time to make the money, or like start making profit. So if you lose the customer in the first year itself, you're basically losing money. And that's detrimental to any company's growth. And that's where all these high valuation is coming in, wherein we're showing seeing a lot of growth coming in, and that's where that gets rewarded on the street as well. I'll kind of skip quickly, but in the last, I think what, again, one of the stat which again is very important is like, people do complain, but the funny thing is that they may or may not complain to you directly. In fact, if you see the last comment, 1 in 25 unhappy customers complain directly to. So there's 24 customer, or 90, more than 90% customer who will never even complain to you. So that's problem, because if you don't even know if somebody is unhappy, that's a big red flag, right? They will switch and you wouldn't even get to know, and by the time you realize, it's already too late. Keep your questions coming in if you have anything. We can take it after this. And feel free to churn. Like, this is my question. Just wanted to get an idea. Is churn bad? I could have made it more obvious, but put it in chat. Like, if anybody, what do you think? Is churn bad? Okay, I guess people are typing. Okay, no, there are good churns to good. Yes and no. Great. I think I like Elaine. think lot of good points, but that exactly is my point, right? I was initially looking to put, is all churn bad, and that would have been an obvious giveaway. But the point is here is, um, variably mostly yes. So one, I think the first and foremost is that churn will happen, right? It's not possible for you to retain 100% of the customer. And we talk about, I think we won't go into the KPI metrics, but net revenue retention is something which will go above 100%. But that basically means that you're growing customers, and if they had a dollar with you, they probably next year will have $5 with you. So overall, it can go above 100%, but gross churn will always be there, or revenue retention will always be less than 100%. And that's where the problem is. The reason I ask this question is that people always associate churn with something bad. There will be times wherein you may not want to do business in certain segments, certain market, and that's why you need to know the business, and that's why it's very, very critical. And that's why I wanted to put this question up front, is that, is churn bad? So definitely, I think good point from most of you guys, like not all churn is bad. There are churn, and I think I just recently, was one of the sessions I was attended, I learned a term called expired churn. So the interestingly thing was that the reason behind, given that there will be customers, we met their outcomes and they were with us on a project basis, there is no point dragging that longer enough. So there will be churn, which we knew, as long as we are aware and moving forward. So there will be churn. So I think that's what just wanted to highlight on this slide. And in the interest of time, I'll quickly move on. What is common on these? And again, I think we probably have another 20 minutes. uh, all brands, which probably every one of you, I would be surprised if you don't know any of these brands, but all these brands are there. But there is more than just the brands, right? These are companies who are highly customer oriented. I mean, Amazon has their logo. The biggest is like customer obsessed. The first principle they have is customer obsession. If you have traveled with Singapore Airlines, you know the kind of customer centricity they have. So the common thing here is that, like, they focus on customers, that the first and foremost priority is customer. And that's where another common thing you will probably see here is that the churn with these companies is going to be very, very minimum. There will be churn, as we mentioned in the last slide, but it will be minimal. And in fact, they continue to grow, and that's where these companies are growing significantly. um, right, so moving on to the strategies in itself. And I'll, again, interest of time, will one thing I just want to highlight here is, um, of course, in no way these strategies will cover everything. One, it may not apply to all the business that you guys represent, and there will be, I mean, I could have put in 5 more slides or 10 more slides. There is no end to various strategies, but I've tried to consolidate and make it simple. But if you have ideas, again, throw in into the chats, and we can always take it offline as well. First and foremost, customer segmentation. This is again my personal learning, and over the years I've worked with different companies. This is one of the biggest learning that I've had. I think the key here is understand your customer. Build your ideal customer profile. Somebody call it as a perfect customer profile. But then the key here is that you have limited resources. You can't put all the resources on all the customers. There is no way you will sustain that business. You have to prioritize your customers. You have to understand who are my key customers, whether, like, I mean, and again, I'm not restricting it. Again, it's a general audience. So you could prioritize by customer dollar spend. You could prioritize by verticals. You could prioritize by like certain segments based on they like dollar spend with you, but also the potential of the dollars they can potentially spend with you. But the most important thing is that all you can do everything once you understand your ideal customer profile. Look at your, I think, again, one of the sessions I was attending with another function was one of this model I learned very recently, is that look at your top 5 or top 10 customers, which is high dollar values, top in terms of sales cycle, fastest selling, and also the customer that you lose, and try to see a trend there. What's happening with those customers? What's common with your top 10 customers that you sell with in terms of dollar value? What's common with your customers who you close the deal very quickly, like the fastest selling deals? And what's common is there a trend with the customers that you're losing? Because that will tell you what sort of ideal customer profile you have. Because if you don't have this one, it will be difficult to come to a more structured program. Again, as I mentioned, segment by wallet share. Once you have done the segmentation, build CS plays based on those segmentation, and CS is customer success plays, because again, if you have enterprise customers, if you are probably a late mature side of the business and not a startup, you probably have very well defined segmentation around enterprise, maybe verticalization as well. What you need to do is that you can't have same set of resources in SMB space. You can't have same focus on like on the like enterprise space. So basically, of course, given the complexity on the enterprise space, you need to have more resources there. So making sure that your resources are aligned with the segmentation is critical. So again, that's what the last point says: align resources for maximum impact. Second, understand and analyze churn. As we probably like saw in the last couple of slide, understand the churn will happen, but the important thing is that look for trends. What's why customers are leaving you, and not just make broad-based assumptions or statements. Understand the data. Whether it's avoidable or not. As we mentioned, not all churn is bad. There are churn you will probably want. Basically avoid the, like, if you can't avoid it, whether like there is no way you can do anything. So understanding whether it's avoidable or not. One of the things personally I've seen as a challenge is when churn is happening, very critical for the CS teams or the renewals team to make sure that you document the real reason why churn is happening. The reason I'm saying is that at least in my personal experience, what we have done varies with certain campaigns. Going forward in 6 months, 1 year down the line, we go back to those customers, and if we knew that they didn't they moved away from us because of budget reasons or something which we could have fixed then, but at that not at that moment, you want to go back to those customers and see what's happening in 6 months time, because things change. So that's why understanding, but you can't do this if you're putting reasons like customer unresponsive, like customer not using product, unless until it's very clear whether they are moving to competitor, probably not, no point going back to them. But especially where it comes to budget and some of these complexity, it makes sense so that's why it's very important to document these reasons. um, Another thing is that tie it back to actionable items. Like you can have all the data with you, but if there is no actionable items based on those data, it will be very critical. um, Make it visible internally. You want to make sure that your executive have the visibility and quantify it, because if you go, we are having, I mean, I'm sharing it with my personal experience. All the while we thought our churn rates are good, we are hitting our numbers, but when we started deep diving and looking at the numbers, and we realized that we had like, not in this company but one of my previous company, the churn was as high as 20-25%, and that wasn't good. We were losing money, and when we quantified it based on, had we retained these customers and it's a recurring revenue, we would have had much like bigger revenue impact. So everybody took note of it, even at an executive level. So it was very critical. So making sure that you have a seat at the table, you provide that visibility to the leadership team and quantify it, because otherwise you won't get a voice. I'm seeing some question coming in. Ryan, we should take it later, right?
Yes, I mean, we can leave the whole live Q&A session after your presentation.
Okay.
I believe that there was like structure line throughout your keynote. It might be better if you can go through all that, and then we can get back to Lucy's question, Mira's question, Aaron, and everyone else. Joshua, again, thank you all for tuning in.
Yeah, keep
It's a
the
great
question coming in.
presentation.
Great to have the feedback. So um,
Mhm.
again, the next slide is database decision making, very close to my heart personally. One of the things I've realized, and not just with like at our level or even at executive level, sometimes sorry, sometimes because of the lack of resources, lack of time, what generally happens is that we rely a lot on gut, and sometimes we don't have a choice. But as much as possible, look at your data, analyze the data, as we mentioned in the previous slide, understand your churn. But part of this is that sometimes by the time churn happens, and again, churn doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen when you ask for a renewal or ask the customer for a PO to extend the contract. you would probably have seen or at least heard some signs. You may not have measured it, but you would have there would definitely be enough signs before a churn actually happens. And that happens way early, 6 months, 8 months before renewal, and sometimes right after they have bought it, because they were oversold. They didn't understand um, the like why was the product sold, or like the features was not there, or sometimes it's simply they had a bad experience implementing the product. So having those indicators or KPIs aligned and um, data driven. I think one of the things which I generally love is that if you have identified those data points and you are measuring it on a daily, weekly basis, you can start measuring your team on those. And I think I'll give you one very simple example. One of the things we did was putting one of my previous companies putting a health check campaign. And when we were doing the health check, one of the simple aspect was that if you don't have more than two decision makers as part of like your health check, uh, it should be red or amber. It cannot be green. Or if you're missing and if you've had like no contact with certain decision maker for 6 months, it should be amber or red or like. So that kind of a is a leading indicator, right? When you're not talking to customer, you need to understand what's happening with the customer. So making sure that reports are there and you're tracking it on a regular basis, and make it part of your weekly cadence with your team is very, very critical, because that will tell you early indicators of not just risk. By the way, this is not just applies to the risk that's in the business, but there will be times wherein your customer is happy with the product, there is an opportunity for expansion. That's where you want to leverage these when you have measurable KPIs. That's why you can focus on it. Again, leverage data to be predictive. You can't just sit back and see and then analyze the data. We need to leverage the data, and based on these KPIs be more predictive. And the last thing is use multiple data points. Again, may not be relevant, or especially if you are a startup, you will have limited data points. But then as much as possible, use multiple data points, talk to customers, get certain data points, look at industry trends, because that will tell you a story. At least will tell you a directional story. Like without data points is you're basically shooting in the dark. So very, very critical. I think when you're making decisions, leverage data, and leverage it properly. I mean, there would be some investment wherein you probably have to have a data scientist or at least business analyst in the business. So make sure that um, we need to make sure that like we leverage data properly. Invest in CS function and tools. Very obvious, since we're talking about customer success as a function, we need to make sure that we are investing. But again, I'll tie it back to the previous slide wherein I said that get a seat at the table, and you will only get the seat at the table when you quantify the impact, right? When somebody knows, and I think most of you guys are SaaS, so the valuation of SaaS companies are actually by growth, but also by net retention, so how much you are retaining. And on a healthy SaaS company, the churn rate should be less than 5, somewhere around 5. I think that's where the industry benchmark, 5 to 7%. So making sure that usually if you're with a SaaS or a startup, people will pay attention, and everybody is building a CS function right now. But if you're with some of the older or mature vendors, wherein may not have the same, you have to quantify and make sure that the executive understands the impact of not having a CS function. Um, Quantify the problem, quantify the dollar impact, and you will have people listening into you. Build a CS playbook. Once you have invested in like hiring people is not like enough, you have to have a proper playbook to make sure that processes are built, people understand what are the KPIs that we just spoke about in the previous slide. And again, by the way, I'm just touching with all these certain ideas, right? I'm not going this each topic on it may have its specific module or a session on itself. So building a CS playbook could be a much more detailed exercise. Invest in tools like Gainsight or Tango. By the way, like I'm just putting names here which I've used or I know about. No way I'm promoting them. So some of these think very famous names you would probably know, but they have inbuilt processes. They helps you with certain CTAs, call to actions, that you leverage to manage and measure churn. And I think I saw somewhere question is effectively measure risk, right? So that's where these tools have some parameters which helps you build. I mean, you can do it offline, but again, it's not scalable, right? You can do it on Excel. You can put certain, you still have to put input in these tools, Gainsight or Tango, like you have to define what risk look like, because the risk for my business may look like different compared to your business. So making sure that you have to still define what's the risk looks like, and we'll probably talk a little bit about it later. But we need to make sure that leveraging these tools will give you an insight in terms of scalability, and then you're able to measure it and compare it. I think the key here is that one of the things is, one, you are able to measure it and compare it over weeks, years, months. So you say whether what's the trend looks right, and that level of details comes from using a CS tool. Define clear KPIs and comp structure. And having a team, having a tool is not enough. You need to make sure that the KPIs are clearly defined, and you're comping it based, your compensation is based on those defined KPIs. Many times I've seen that KPIs are different and then the comp is different. And most of you would know, like comp drives behavior, whether it's sales or CS, anywhere. So you need to make sure that the KPIs are tied very clearly to the comp structure. Okay, moving on to the next slide, and I'll probably rush a little bit given that we have probably 5 minutes. Build an ecosystem. Again, something in today's world, we don't have like, we don't run our business in isolation. Like you pick a B2C, B2B, any business, we don't run in isolation. So the key here is that even if you have a product, it will become more sticky. And I think it's a very general statement. I put it, create stickiness. You can't just create stickiness. One is based on the services that you offer, but the stickiness comes from like having an ecosystem. Look for business adjacencies. Look at what your product. I think HubSpot is a great example. They started with just inbound marketing, and now they're doing pretty much everything. They expanded their business in towards CRM, towards um, like uh, like a lot of other functions. So creating that business adjacencies create that stickiness with the customers. I mean, I just put in a Starbucks Spotify example. They have a great tie-up. Like nobody will connect the two generally, like Starbucks with Spotify, but they have a tie-up which helps drive each other's subscription or membership. Hyperscalers, you see, like the Azures of the world, AWS, Google, they tie up with a lot of other vendors to make sure that you have one place to go, and instead of going to multiple vendors. Apple is a great example of the ecosystem that they have created. It's no longer a phone. Like I think the famous quote from Steve Jobs talks about that they impacted 6 industries with one technology. So that creates stickiness. There is no way, like, I mean, if you get into, I mean, I'm a big Apple fan. Like my Mac, my iPhone, my watch, everything, like it's all well connected. There is no way I can go into Android ecosystem because everything is connected. So creating that stickiness is key. Continuous innovation goes without saying. We need to make sure that our product is continuously evolving, and we are adding services to make sure that it goes along with the product enhancement. Joint offerings with partners. A lot of companies are doing it. I think if you've heard Satya Nadella a few times, Microsoft CEO, he talks about being partners. There is no competition. Basically, you go together and work together. Joint offerings. He has gone with like nobody even thought in the past when he had a partnership with Red Hat. Like they were at one point of time, people would say they were arch enemies, but they built a strong partnership, and that's what created like efficiencies for both the companies and retention for both the companies. So building an ecosystem is very, very critical. Map customer journey. I'll quickly skip through it because I think there are other sessions we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the acquisition, activation. The bottom line, what I wanted to highlight here is that understand your customer journey, how they're buying, what's matter to them, and map it to, you can't just have a great onboarding and then you forget about the customer and come back at the renewal time. You have to have that during the acquisition stage, even like if possible. I know it's not that easy. When the customer is getting acquired, having a say from a CS is important, especially in SaaS, as some of you have mentioned. You want to make sure that when the customer is getting acquired, you have a say and make sure that we are not over promising or under delivering at the latest stage. Otherwise, even before you have started, you have a risk of losing the customer. So you have to map and make sure that you have clearly defined processes, have a feedback loop with the customer. You want to understand the pain with the customer, what's happening, how you can be more effective. There is no better teacher than the customer, as we always say. Customer advisory boards, again, this is more relevant for probably my industry and some of you, especially in tech. Like especially if you're a niche product, niche segment, thought leadership is very, very important. You need to have initiative wherein you're like, I think a great example is when Nutanix came up with the Hyperage converged infrastructure, so that's where they had to create a lot of awareness, a lot of thought leadership around the same. So if you have the same, there is like people start respecting you in the industry. So creating that that ecosystem again is very important. Keep on educating the customer, goes without saying. Okay, breaking down silos. It sounds simple, but especially if you're a mature stage company, startups, you may not see this very often, but it's good to build those processes early in the process, because the risk with growing, the pain that comes with growth is like there are too many people, and like when you're too many cooks in the kitchen, they spoil the broth, right? So making sure that people have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and it's a unified vision, right? No, not a single person owns customer success in a company, not customer success. And it's a very cliche statement, like customer success is not owned by customer success team only. It has to be like by everybody in the organization. Some of the companies I've worked with, like especially the cloud companies, even if you walk into a company and you talk to a person at the reception, that person will know about what's cloud and what's happening, and like, so the whole point is that everybody in the company should know and understand customer success. It cannot be one team's responsibility. It has to be a company-wide customer success mindset. And then you can have all this, but if you don't recognize and reward people, it falls apart. So rewarding customer centricity and collaboration is important. You make it part of your value system, reward people on the spot when somebody does that, and portrays those behavior, so that like it becomes part of the company's DNA. Build a community within and outside the organization. Some of the like companies have, I mean, HubSpot is doing it. I'm taking HubSpot's name a few times. Tableau does it. They created a big community outside, and they're a big vocal spokesperson for Tableau, and that drives referrals, that drives word of mouth marketing. So leveraging that community is very, very critical, especially again, as I mentioned, if you're in a niche segment, it definitely drives a lot more value. Okay, apologize and be present. I think it's a it's a very cliche slide, because we generally say, yeah, we do apologize if you make mistake. I think the to me is that I've seen many times we start giving excuses, and we see it in our daily life. You go to a restaurant, you go to work with your telco. A recent example that happened with me was with one of my telcos. But mistake happens. Everybody make mistake. Own it. I think instead of starting to give excuses, make sure that we own that mistake, we apologize, and be present. A lot of times I've won business and it became into a lifelong customer when we didn't leave the customer. Sometimes what typically happens is that it's not that we purposefully leave the customer. We'll say, oh, let me come back and find out the problem, like what's happening. Be with the customer, be present with the customer, listen. They may be upset with you, but that when they will see you in front of you when things are not going well, they will be always they will always appreciate you, because not a lot of people do that. And if you do that, they will appreciate that when they needed you, you were there. I think that's, again, it's very, very kind of a bit of a niche statement, but it's very, very important. I've seen the direct impact. I can't quantify it right now, but it's very, very impactful. Set expectation and provide timelines. Yeah, nobody likes to understand, because especially in tech, some of the challenges may not be driven by our own products, and because of the complex ecosystem or integration, you work with the customer, set expectation, set timelines. And of course, goes without saying, get your best resources. Again, it boils down to the customer segmentation, right? You can't do this on maybe your SMB segment. If you have a customer who is giving you $5,000, yes, you have to do the right thing, but then you can't get all your resources on that 5,000 customers. So prioritizing, and that's why customer segmentation was very, very important. On that note, I think we have probably 4 minutes over. And that's it, and I'll open it up for Q&As. Ryan?
Thank you, Aaron. What a great presentation. I think everyone enjoyed it. I can see loads of comments and questions in the chat space here already. We might have time for maybe 2 and 3. I just pick a quick one here from Milan, not a quick one, a popular one here, because I see people wondering the same. So what if this sales isn't aligned with the CS on the perfect customer profile? Oftentimes, if we know that the fit, but sales has pressure on hitting the target, we might get customers that from the start that's clear won't last long. So CS doesn't really have control what comes in. What do you think of that?
Great point. And I think it goes without saying. I know when I was building these slides, it sounded very easy to put it on the slide, but when it comes into application, it becomes very critical, right? Because everybody, and that's why I think goes back to that slide where I was mentioning that break silos. So one and the foremost thing is you should do is that look at the data again. If you just rely or we don't agree on a customer, how do we even come at what's the ideal customer profile? So one thing we need to do is that, as I mentioned with you, like look at your top hype of like dollar customers that you have in terms of dollar values that we've brought in, or could be 10, could be 20, like I'm just giving you a number. Or look at like the customers who have you've closed quickly, like fastest sales cycle, because that drives growth, right? And then look at your highest churn, like top 10 20 customers that you've lost, and look at the trend, and you will get a lot of these answers. Because then it's not about a person, because many of the times what happens is that when we talk to like the sales, we say, oh, this looks a better profile from a CS side, and sales will take it personally because they were the one who brought that business in, right? Like, so you'd want to avoid that personal bias. In a way, it's not exactly a bias, but it's to the person you're telling him, he is the one who brought the, or he or she is the one who brought the business in. So if you're telling them, oh, it wasn't the right fit, of course that person like is like, oh, is that question mark on me? So if you spoke about the data, based on the data, I think it drives away that emotional connect, and it's pure facts and figures, right? We lose these customers because we over promised. Either we build it as a function, as a product feature, or we try not to bring these customers, at least be upfront with those customers. Because like you will lose the customer anyways because you're not able to deliver it. The second is that you will like create a bad word of mouth for you industry, because people, as I mentioned, right, if customers are unhappy, they'll talk to a lot of other people, but they won't talk to you necessarily. So that's why creating that. And again, just a last piece, but it's important to make sure that all this comes. That's why I specified a little bit on quantifying the data, whatever impact is happening. Because once you're quantifying it and brings it to the leadership visibility, when it comes top down, when leadership says, yeah, we have to have a joint workshops to run through with the ideal customer profile, with the sales, with the CS, because that's where like we will be working as a team, has a lot more powerful impact. Hopefully
Thank
I
you.
answered the question.
Definitely. I just like quickly read out another question for you.
Sure.
I think this is really a good one. So from your experience, what's the best way to recover from a very important customer who had a really bad onboarding experience that's now not really like willing to engage again, even though you know they'd be a good fit?
Again, it's kind of a two pieces to it, right? One is that when you say onboarding experience, if it's a purely onboarding poor onboarding experience, I think it does make sense for you to offset somewhere, maybe give some discount. And I think I didn't cover somewhere. I think there's a lot of other aspect which is more transactional in nature, loyalty programs, throwing in discounts, retain customer for like tie up them for multi-year. Like some companies have that policy. If you do a sign up for 3 years, you get 10%, 15% discount, because you lock in the customer by tying up for the long term. But when you, as I mentioned, was mentioning, right, we make mistakes, especially around like if onboarding we made mistake, you can go back to customer, say that we made these assumptions because of course when you were doing onboarding you probably didn't have the enough data point with you to be on top of everything. So you generally make mistake on those mistakes. And if possible, if you know it's a situation wherein customer is going to walk away anyways, offset it with some, try to retain it one way or the other, like give some discount so that they stay with you. But then there will be times he will walk away, right? You can't, again, that's why we said churn will never be zero. So there will be times you will lose the customer. Be realistic with it and learn from that mistake. Sometimes whatever you do, customer will walk away. So but then make the exit, I think, just to close this comment, make the exit so professional that in future if there is a need, they make willing to come back to you. So sometimes it's not good to just retain the customer for the sake of it. Sometimes it's okay to let it go and own the mistake. But when you do it professionally, I'm pretty sure, and I've seen that customers coming back to us later on when something other need comes up.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wilson, Tim, Hani, Lawrence. I can see a lot of good comments here already. We might have time for one last question. Sorry if I didn't get to select yours because we are coming to the
And
end
I'm
of the
happy,
session.
Ryan, if you can consolidate and send it to me later, I can answer some of best to my ability, or people can reach out to me directly through LinkedIn. I gave you my connect, so we can talk it offline.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to connect with Aaron via LinkedIn after this event. I'm sure that he will be open for discussions. Let me also quickly share our CS virtual community here, where you can really like connect with each one, like ask your questions, and then get involved. We got many of people members there already. It's a community that we build up for people to make connections and share knowledge and experience. But that being said, one last question. I'm gonna
Sure.
randomly pick one here. We got Josh here. He's wondering how to best identify the term reasons, as most clients won't open mention that like they could be quite unresponsive.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was aligning to it, right? Because exactly, if you ask the customer, they may say, "Oh, everything is good," because again, the normal habit is that people don't want to give us the bad news, but come renewal and they say, "Oh, we have already moved on to somewhere else." I think couple of things which as I mentioned, we didn't go into details, were especially around KPIs, like usage. Some companies have data wherein like we do it, we get insights how our products being used at the company side. If you know that the usage is low enough, if I'm just making it very simple, but if you have SaaS product, but and you have subscriptions, if you sold 50 subscription and only 5 is in use, it's a red flag, straight away red flag, because they're not utilizing 90% of or less than 90% of your product itself. So why would they renew it? Similarly, if the usage was high initially and it's dropping, that again a red flag, there is something going on which you don't know. So like you need to understand that one. Sometimes as basic as that, like how many touch points you have, has your sponsor or champion within the organization has left. I think I did see some comment there, like if people change, that definitely maybe, if not, if your account were green, it may become amber, or if not red, at least amber. So because you have to re-establish the relationship with the new person, and that's where the potential risk comes in. So I think with the retention strategy, we always, at least my preference is to always start from a bit more risky proposition, knowing that assume there is a risk rather than not assume there is a risk, right? If you assume there is a risk and there is no risk, great. But if you assume there is a risk and you find something and like some indicators, it will generally kind of help you to build some of those processes. But yeah, I think it's a much bigger question. Thanks for raising it. There's a lot more. I think these indicate, that's why these are leading indicators about customer health, the usage, like how they are responsive when you're getting them on a call. All these tells you some story, right? When you're scheduling your demos or onboarding, or like, and if they're not turning up, or if the key people are not turning up, that's a question mark for you. So that kind of start giving you some like potential risk.
Thank you, Aaron. That's very insightful, and thank you for the whole presentation. Sorry, I'm muting Adita, Santosh, and others. For we are not having enough time for you to address your question. But like I mentioned, please feel free to connect with Aaron over LinkedIn, and then join our CS community. And yeah, I have to cut this off for now. Thank you, Aaron, again, and thank you for everyone's tuning
Thanks,
in.
team.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everyone. I'll look forward to meeting all of
Cheers.
you in our next sessions and the rest of the festival.
Yeah, stay safe, take care all, everybody.
Stay safe. Take care. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Aditi. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, team.
Lawrence, Talita. Take care. Bye bye.